There was a little more activity in the pre-race paddock at the Rustenburg 400 than is normally the case at off-road events. A huge field of cars and bikes added to the congestion as competitors went through the documentation and scrutineering formalities. As far as Off-Road Commission Chairman Richard Leake was concerned, the huge entry was a welcome sight.
We're looking forward to a very interesting season. We've moved to 7 events this year from 6 as of last year. As one can see from the field here today, the entries are looking good and strong. We're hoping to introduce a new section within the production class this year, somewhere along the lines of trophy truck, that's just the name at this stage, where the class E, which is the 4-cylinder 4-wheel drive class, builds up because we're lacking entries in that class. On the specials categories, there's a very strong entry from Class A and Class B. Class C, I think, will grow during the year because of the simplification of the regulations.
Franz Czepek and his son Franz Jr. shared the Special Vehicle Championship honours with the Sorwell brothers in 1994. The veteran Czepek was looking forward to another good season.
We've got a well-prepared car, a lot of well-prepared cars here. All the guys have rebuilt their cars, but we're in the running. We did reasonably well at this race last year. As a matter of fact, we won it. And today's going to be very wet again by the looks of things, but hopefully no rain for everybody. And but I think it'll be nice. I think it'll be a race where we want us to be very careful not to get bogged down in the mud or in the rivers or something.
Another top contender was the high-tech Shell Raceco driven by Stan Illman and Franz Stangl.
We're running a Tiptronic gearbox and a Porsche 3.6 motor. The gearbox is modified to lower the ratios for the bigger wheels. The car has about 270 horsepower, and we have about 16 inches of travel in the front and about 15 inches of travel at the rear. The car is of the highest tech that Raceco make, I think, today, in the buggy format, and it should be top of the range. It's a coil spring suspension running Bilstein shocks all around. The front shocks are of the aluminium type. We've moved away from the steel type. We think they should work a little better, and we'll see how we go. The car's rides on very soft suspension, a little softer than they normally do in America, and we think the car handles a little better like that, but we'll see how we compete against the other guys.
The Cliff Barker, Mike Redden and RP Reinecker Lucas Dreyer combinations dominated the commercial vehicle category last year. Reinecker, as ever, was in a cautious mood.
As usual, take it easy. Just see what the situation outside, how wet it is, and don't take chances. Because today, if you do take a chance, it's the end of the race. You can get stuck here in the mud, as I did last year.
There was also a facelift during the off-season for the Nissan Sani, driven by Neil Woolridge and Paul Vermaak.
Without the windscreen, it is going to be a bit tricky. We're obviously going to get dirty and muddy. But then hopefully we've lost quite a bit of weight, and the car should run nice and cool, so it shouldn't be too bad. And everyone else sits in the mud and water all the time, so it shouldn't be a problem.
The Rustenburg 400 also drew a full field of motorcycle competitors, with all the top names in South African off-road racing out in force. The high-felt sun was beating down on Rustenburg as the car competitors formed up for the start at the town civic centre. Large crowds of locals had turned out for the occasion, with reigning cross-country marathon champions Herman and Karl-Heinz Sulwald the first car to come under starters' orders. Mid-morning temperatures were already in the 30s, and it was going to be hot work for car crews and the motorcyclists. Some of the heaviest rainfalls ever recorded in the Rustenburg area during the week were also expected to provide for a wet route. Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leake followed the Sulwalds in the Castrol Toyota Hilux, and it wasn't long before the leaders had their first taste of the wetter sections of the route. Being first on the road has its advantages and disadvantages. A distinct advantage is not having to contend with the dust up ahead. A disadvantage of being at the head of the field is having to play a pathfinding role, but it was competitors behind the Sulwalds who were at odds with the route schedule. With a couple of crews running into early problems with route finding, Rob Walk in the single-seater Super-Pay Graysco slotted in behind the Sulwalds. The single-seater drivers faced the additional task of navigating as well as driving. Walk was quite happy to let the Sulwalds do the pathfinding, but was being closely followed by the Queen Motor Spares Raceco driven by Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton from the Eastern Cape. Slotting into fourth place in the battle of the special vehicles was the father and son team of Franz Czepek Sr. and Franz Jr. Last year's race winners had pulled ahead of Craig Hopkinson and Kate Schimmel, who were leading the Class B runners. The wet conditions sometimes took their toll, and when the Hopkinson-Schimmel combination ran into traction problems in a river crossing, they were overtaken by Class A runners Nick Harper and Richard Hill in the Rock Oil Raceco. A good scrap was starting to develop in Class B, with Hopkinson and Schimmel being chased by Karl van Rensburg in the Brixton Exhaust Raceco. Late entries, Nardus Alberts and Peter Mathieu were going along steadily in the Rapsa Raceco and were comfortably placed in the top 10 towards the end of the first of two 180-kilometre laps. The service point at the Rustenburg Showgrounds provided a little respite for the hot, tired and wet crews. Starting from almost at the back of the field, Craig Draper and Robin Houghton were on a charge in the Draper Plant Hire Raceco. With nothing to lose, the pair scythed their way through the field to eventually finish a creditable fifth in the special vehicle category. While Draper and Houghton were playing catch-up on the rest of the field, there was drama up front with Stan Illman and Franz Stangl in the Shell Raceco slipping into the lead as other front runners ran into problems. There were no heroics from Illman and Stangl, who were being chased by Nardus Alberts and Peter Mathieu, who wrong-slotted at this point and headed for retirement in the Rapsa Raceco. Hardest hit in the unfolding drama were the Sorwell brothers, who lost the lead through two punctures and who were trying to fight back. They quickly made up ground on the Czepek father and son combination, and with blaring air horns were making no bones about the fact that they wanted the Czepeks to politely pull over and let them through. In an impressive performance, Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton were also in contention in the Queen Motor Spares car. There were also no heroics from Harvey and Acton, but behind them Rob Walk was going like a train in the Superpave Raceco. Trying to make up time after a puncture, Walk was driving as aggressively as ever. The Class B battle was being dominated by Craig Hopkinson and Kate Schimmel. They had a handy lead over Wade Perrins and Gerrit Frankenberg, and then ran into a stroke of bad luck and were forced to retire. It was a bitter blow for the pair, but there were also problems for Nick Harper and Richard Hill, who had gradually fallen behind in the Rock Oil Raceco. At the front of the field, it was all smiles for Stanley Illman and Franz Stangl in the Shell Raceco. With a big crowd on hand at the finish at the Rustenburg Showgrounds, the pair came sailing home to take the checkered flag from clerk of the course Piet Swanepoel. Right on their tails was Rob Walk in the Superpave Raceco. The gap on the road between Walk and Illman and Stangl was only seconds, but with the race run on corrected time, the Shell Raceco pair were 4 minutes ahead of Walk. There were congratulations all round for a delighted Illman and Stangl, who won despite a few problems along the way. On their road to their first ever national championship win, Illman and Stangl may have had their trials and tribulations, but they were nothing compared to the Sorwell brothers, who finished on 3 wheels.
Went fine. We had a bunch of 5Ks out the back now, and but we lost the steering about 100 Ks out from the finish, so we were driving without any power steering. So it slowed us up a bit, but otherwise it went fine. Car went super.
A maiden win for Stan Illman and Franz Stangl, with great performances from Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton, with Rob Walk first home among the single-seaters. It was also a successful event for Raceco crews, who took 8 of the top 10 positions. There was a turn-up for the books in the motorcycle section, with Yuri Human storming to victory on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda. Human's first national win also saw him take the 500 class. Pre-race favourite Alfie Cox on the Pro Action Castrol KTM had to be content with second place and finished just 5 seconds ahead of Darryl Curtis to win the 250 class. The 200 class went to Richard Manning on the dealer team Yamaha, who came in 5th overall. In the quad racer category, Vickers van Deventer on the Yawa led home Derek Johnson and Christoph van der Merwe on Yamahas. The early stages of the Rustenburg 400 saw a tremendous tussle developing in the commercial vehicle category. The main protagonists were Springboks Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek in the Castrol Toyota Hilux, and Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Video Sport SVM Land Rover. The Land Rover pair had a tremendous season in 1994, winning the overall South African Championship, and looked to have taken up where they left off last season. RP Reinecker and new navigator Wiley Harrington in the Bankfin Toyota Land Cruiser were also well placed. But up front it was Coetzee, Leek and Barker Redden who were involved in a tremendous dice. The Land Rover had closed in on the Toyota Hilux, and Barker and Redden were looking for a way past Coetzee and Leek, who have a tremendous record in both off-road racing and rallying. Navigator Redden had his hand hard on the Land Rover's air horn as the two vehicles did some high-speed bundu bashing. Barker and Redden eventually took the inside line and nipped by Coetzee and Leek. Former biker Neil Woolridge and navigator Paul Vermaak were going along steadily in the Time Freight Nissan Sani and were in touch with the leading trio when they were hit by a spate of punctures. Then there was drama for Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Video Sport SVM Land Rover. After having got past Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek in the Castrol Toyota Hilux, the pair looked to be in complete control of the race. That all changed when Barker and Redden pulled off the route with the Land Rover's throttle stuck wide open. While Redden jumped out to try and rectify the problem, Coetzee and Leek blasted past the stricken Land Rover to reclaim the lead. Up until a day or two before the race, it was uncertain whether or not Cassie Coetzee would partner Richard Leek in the Toyota Hilux. Coetzee won his Springbok colours as a rally driver, and over the last couple of seasons has been a regular in the Toyota off-road lineup. Coetzee was finally pressed into service once more, and racecam action shows him hard at work in an environment that is hot, cramped and very noisy. Conditions at off-road racing service points are not quite up to Formula One standards. The facilities may be a bit primitive, but the action is just as frenetic as you will find at any Grand Prix. Off-road service crews have to wait hours for their charges to appear on the scene, but then it's all hands on deck. Time spent in service areas is as important to off-road crews as it is to Michael Schumacher.
Well, we're having a good run, except we had a puncture which held us up for 5-10 minutes, and we got lost. The marking near the end here is a little bit touch and go. I think we had to change the course, and now we've just got another puncture, so that's working.
While the Time Freight Nissan Sani was being readied for a return to the battlefield, Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek had consolidated their lead in the commercial category in the Castrol Toyota Hilux. As is the case in any motor race, reliability of machinery is a major factor, and the Castrol Toyota was running like clockwork. The Bankfin Toyota Land Cruiser in the hands of RP Reinecker and Wiley Harrington was running second on the road. Harrington is something of a motorsport all-rounder, and apart from a season or two driving off-road vehicles, has raced single-seaters on the track and has navigated for many of South Africa's top rally drivers. With their throttle problem now sorted out, Cliff Barker and Mike Redden were in hot pursuit of the Toyota. Neil Woolridge and Paul Vermaak were also trying to make up time in the Nissan Sani, but out in front, Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek were in control of proceedings in the Castrol Toyota.
600 meters. The road leads slightly right, cross over a railway line
Although machinery and terrain are totally different, there is common ground between rallying and off-road racing. As in the case in rallying, off-road racing requires a high degree of teamwork between driver and navigator.
Slight right, cross over railway line.
While Coetzee and Leek went on their merry way, RP Reinecker and Wiley Harrington lost valuable time when they picked up a puncture. They were not the only ones to suffer, with Cliff Barker and Mike Redden also hit by flat tyres. Once again, Barker and Redden had to make up time, and again Redden hit the hooter button as the pair came up on one of the special vehicle backmarkers. With a clean run behind them, Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek powered the Castrol Toyota Hilux to an impressive victory. On corrected time, the Toyota crew had 11 minutes in hand over Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Videosport SVM Land Rover. For Cassie Coetzee, unsure of his place in the team until the last moment, it was a win to savour. For Leek, there were congratulations from wife Renelle, and with delighted Toyota officials on hand to welcome home the winners, Coetzee was given an impromptu shower with the traditional bubbly. The winners were already celebrating when Bux Carolyn and Jeff Bell completed their first lap. While it was back to work for the problem-plagued Toyota crew, a delighted Coetzee reflected on a great start to the season.
I'm very pleased about it because all the bad luck we've got for the last couple of years, and now at least for the first event we have a nice clean win.
A popular win for Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek, followed by Cliff Barker and Mike Redden, with Toyota picking third place via Arpie Reiniker and Wiley Harrington.